All right, you're tuned into Bare Knuckle Bowker, and we are joined by the super lightweight champion. Now, domineering over the BYB, holding that vaunted Police Gazette championship, and came out of BYB 32 Leeds Brawl with that PG diamond belt. And it was a comprehensive performance against Joe Fitzpatrick on October 12th. Quite the stabbing left hook to the body, dropping Fitzpatrick and ending that fight. Great to have Harry Gigliotti on Bare Knuckle Bowker. How you doing, man? I imagine you're on cloud nine.
Oh man, I was actually literally just about to say that, Dylan. I still haven't. I feel like I haven't woke up from the dream yet. No, I'm kind of waiting to see like what's gonna change, and just I've been talking to a ton of different people, sponsorships and stuff, and ever since that moment of getting home, a lot of things are changing in my life right now, and I'm truly I'm truly blessed for it, and I'm so happy to be able to take the belt home and inaugurate myself as a super lightweight world champ.
Yeah, I mean, historic in a few regards. I mean, I guess the fact that they hadn't had the previous champion in that division, as you stated, and now you have that historical distinction. I just love what BYB does in that kind of sense too, because they have their own unique history with the BYB hardware. But then you look at like that Police Gazette championship, just over a century of lineage to it. So just great stuff all around, man.
Yeah, I love being a part of history, and anything I do, people have heard my story in the past. I come from four generations of boxing, so I already kind of carry that historic background of boxing and where it came from in my family. And I'm the first descent of our bare knuckle fighting in my family, so this is like a whole new thing. My family's completely ecstatic. My grandfather's 92 years old. He got to live to see me win a world title. That was something I always wanted, promised him. And I just can't believe it. It's all everything. My hard work's all just came together, and I accomplished one of my biggest things to date, which was winning a world title.
And there's just so many factors too, because I saw a post where you were talking about how you manifested this from when you were a kid. And I mean, just doing so in less than ideal circumstances to, loosely describe that. Like it seemed like you were going through a bit, like weeks of battling through illnesses and just
Yes,
different
sir.
antibiotics and whatnot. Like I'd seen a post kind of touching on that as well. Like I imagine that kind of adds a certain extra something to the moment, just like in a far from ideal set of circumstances physically and whatnot. Like you still got the job done. You still actualized your dream into reality, man.
Yeah, actually, to follow up with that, about 4 weeks ago, I had a bad case of bronchitis. I do think it was caused from maybe COVID or something along the lines, and I let it. I wouldn't go get checked because I just it was in my pride to just keep working through it, and I was gonna battle it out no matter what. But about like 2 weeks ago, I was like, I need antibiotics. I got to at least try to clear this up a little bit. So it kind of helped, and things were looking good. And then about a week ago, I got diagnosed with a sinus infection, and I'm getting ready to get on a plane in 2 days for the biggest fight of my life. And I just, obviously the anxiety was running, and I was going through the mental, what ifs and kind of playing scenarios out in my head, and some of them were, it was basically just a really tough obstacle that I had to overcome. And it was beyond the fact of people say I had to go through the mental aspects of things. It was physical at that point, you know what I mean? And I knew that I didn't want to get exhausted during the fight. I was worried about my cardio, but I actually read that and this is what kind of like it put me in that it tuned me back in and made me it gave me good energy and made me feel I had good willpower to want to go through with the fight. But Alex Pereira actually was diagnosed with bronchitis, and they had, I guess he was out for 3 weeks of his camp or something along the lines of that. And, relatably enough, I was out for a week. So it was like, oh man, if he can do it and he can go out there and become a world champ, well, defend his belt and stay as the world champion. I can go out here and get a world championship belt too. So it was a lot of inspiration off Alex Pereira, following through with his fight and being sick and battling illness as well. That kind of, gave me that influence to want to fall through and go out with the fight and get the title.
Yeah, I mean, Pereira would be an interesting guy in bare knuckle, just kind of bringing his name up.
Oh, he'd be excellent. His sister actually, I watched because the time zone's different there. So, the night before my fight, it was like 4 a.m. and I couldn't sleep. So me and my brother and my buddy Joey, we put on Karate Combat and we watched his sister break that Irish girl's nose. And the funny enough, I'm fighting an Irishman the next day, so it was just like I don't know, things were lining up. I felt like the stars were all aligned, and I had good people around me, surrounded around me that helped me through it. Going through like the mental rigmarole of everything and just kind of feeling it and obviously I had doubts. I was sick, and I knew that I'm fighting a real technical guy that likes to throw a heavy overhand left. And he did catch me with it. I got stumbled in the first 30 seconds. The first 30 seconds, everybody was like, it was wacky. And it was. That's the only way to really kind of, declare what it was. It was real wacky. I had to really overcome, a quick little deficit. I saw a flash when he hit me with that. So I had to, recover from that. But once I found my timing and took that half step and created the space and, saw the punch that kind of put him on the ropes when he went square, and it set me up perfectly for that body shot.
And I'd be curious to get your thoughts on this because I saw an article heading into the fight where you were talking about how much you had been studying the fights of your opponent and noticed
Right.
several mistakes that you intended to capitalize on. Like those moments you were talking about there that you were able to capitalize on that resulted in the finish. Like, was that rooted in the mistakes that you had noticed before, or was it something you picked up in the body of the fight inside the Trigon?
So with like some of his previous fights, especially with like Liam Reese and Liam Rocky Reese and even Johnny Jones had him on the ropes a couple times. We noticed that he goes square footed, so like his feet are in front of him, and he goes tight envelope, which in bare knuckle tight envelope is kind of tough to do because it's not like in boxing where you have the gloves where the padding where you can kind of roll and catch and play that heavy defense with the gloves. You don't really have much padding. You know what I mean? It's just hand wraps. So I dug in on a right uppercut to kind of break his guard. I watched it open up. I hit him off a left hook just so he thought that I was staying up top head hunting. And that's when I saw it get tighter enveloped and I saw the body open up. I was waiting for it. And that was something that I did see on film and that we had studied for a while. One thing that my coach was worried about, though, which was risky, we knew it was going to be a risk to take if he was on the ropes, was he likes to throw uppercuts and likes to shoe shine off that. So I didn't know if he was trying to bait me into a brawl. But from what I think happened is when he threw that check European left hook and tried to catch me with it, I dipped to the side, got under it, and came up and checked him on the chin with the right hand. And that's what kind of set him on the ropes. You know what I mean? That kind of set it up. But the body shot was just perfect plotted. I as soon as I saw him open up and get tight with the envelope off the left hook, I saw that body open up, and it was just good night, Irene, right from there.
And it's kind of interesting because I think there's a certain specific kind of ring craft that one almost has to use fighting in something so unique as the Trigon. But I feel like you were in kind of a interesting position too, just being that you had fought on that triad combat event. And I mean,
Right.
there was some whole thing
Yeah.
after where like there was like I guess some back and forth,
Controversy and stuff like
bit
that. But
got a bit litigious. But just to say you're experienced fighting in a ring of similar dimensions and considerations for yourself.
exactly. I think I learned a lot. I got my footing when I fought in the Triller Strike Combat. I also didn't take too much damage because we were gloved. We did have MMA sparring gloves on. I think it was like 5-ounce gloves. So I felt comfortable going in and making my debut. And some would say like Cody Jenkins is a stepping stone fight. He hasn't really won a bare knuckle fight. He's a journeyman, definitely at best. He likes to go out and fight MMA fights and whatever. He's not really. I wouldn't say he's there to win fully. If you hit him good enough, he's going to go down. But that's a perfect starter fight for any guy coming into bare knuckle, where you're not really comfortable yet. You want to work on things. So making my debut against Cody Jenkins was a milestone for me in my career and getting into bare knuckle to see where I'm at. But Joe Fitzpatrick was a whole different opponent compared to even Rusty Crowder, where Rusty, is durable, tough, a veteran in bare knuckle, but not the same skill set that someone like Joe Fitzpatrick would bring to the table. With his pedigree of fighting Gervonta Davis, Commonwealth silver medalist, which is like pretty much the closest thing you can get to almost being on the Olympic trials of Europe. You know what I mean? So this was a different matchup. This was a big step up. I knew he was 10-1 in boxing. I'm 9-5 in boxing with a lot of risk that I took for reward. So it was pretty similar. We both had that experience, that ring generalship, and I didn't know really what to expect. I knew that he was going to be a heavy hitter. I knew that he was tall, and I knew that he liked to throw the left hook. but I didn't know how long he'd be in there for. I didn't know I would stop him that fast. But like I said, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. I happened to tip tap and open him up for it, and the body was just there.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting too because I'd seen another post heading into the fight where you were excited to show off the fact that you were not just the best, but the most technical bare knuckle boxer. And I've seen from some interviews where you've described your style, like you've described yourself as a boxer puncher, and
Yep.
also the wording kind of interesting, traditional boxing style and whatnot. But I guess in even kind of looking at that, like what amendments, if any, do you make from what you're doing to be the or rather the best technical bare knuckle boxer versus like maybe some tendencies you would have in gloved boxing? Like you were even kind of talking about it a bit earlier there, just how some people will utilize techniques that are, sometimes difficult to implement in bare knuckle boxing. So I
Yeah.
guess just to
Yeah.
say, like, how do you, I guess, go about adapting your game or amending certain things, if at all, to be the best technical bare knuckle boxer?
That's actually a great question, and I've actually been getting it a lot lately, especially with people that are kind of like on the, the kind of want to join bare knuckle. They're kind of asking me questions of, what's the difference? Well, the big difference is in boxing you have the padding. I mean, you have the defensive side where you can kind of play tight envelope, like I said. Where in this you got to be kind of out here where you can catch and parry the shots, and you got to create that space. For me, I'm a long fighter. I think that's what saves me, is going to save me mostly in this career, is I know how to use my reach. Where like a smaller guy, like per se, like Mickey Ward, that needs to work inside the body, it would be a bloodbath for him every single fight because he's just dogging it out. You know what I mean? Where I can kind of find my footing and find my pace and kind of set the tone off my jab. Um, I think that's what I bring to the table with boxing. But like I said, I was working decently in the clinch even against Fitzpatrick. And Fitzpatrick comes from a boxing background and even was working in the clinch. And that's why, working with Muay Thai people in the past or working with people that have MMA experience, like I said, one of my coaches and one of my best friends, he's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. We work on clinching sometimes. We work on that. Now, I'm not saying I hit him in the pocket. Normally, I try to work for the break because I'm a boxer. I'll make it feel boring in there, so the ref gives the ref enough time to be like, oh, okay, he's not. There's not. They're not. No one's doing anything in here. Let's get the break, and then I can get my footing and get that center ring again. But Fitzpatrick made that really hard for me. He split my ear open right here. He was getting me good on the side. He got me in the temple a couple times. He was laying his weight on me. A lot of that's how I know. When a boxer knows how to use their weight. He kept laying his weight on me, like making his legs feel dead. And I was trying to do it back, but he had a little bit more of that length on me and was kind of creating the pace at a faster set than I expected it to be. Um, and it was just something that I had to overcome, I guess. And that's what makes bare knuckle, I guess, so beautiful. Is it's a lot different than pace than boxing. Boxing's kind of slow. You know what I mean? You want to play a little bit of chess, where a lot of these guys will try to play checkers with you. And I thought Fitzpatrick maybe was going to play the chess side of boxing. No, he came right out like a checkers match and tried to take my head off. And I was like, wow, this is a lot faster than I thought it was going to be. And I don't know. It's just so different compared to boxing, and I could see a lot of people saying like, bare knuckle boxing is not boxing, but it's very similar. It's just I could also see a lot more technicians in boxing that are like kind of play the Philly shell would not succeed big in bare knuckle. It's a polar different sport when it comes to the clinching, the dirty boxing, not having the padding with the defensive side. So there's a lot that goes into it, but if you have a great boxing background, you will do good though. It can benefit you very much so.
Yeah, and I feel like that even kind of came across. I guess I'm going to reference a couple of title fights over the weekend, but I felt like one of the outings where that came across was with Austin Trout. Like, I feel like he's like obviously a very pedigreed, gloved
Yeah.
boxing champion, and
Yep.
he's been doing great things in BKFC too. So, I mean, I think it's really just that matter of realizing, I guess there's a lot of crossover skill that you can bring from glove boxing into bare knuckle, but at the same time, it's like there should be the consideration to the fact it's ultimately a different game.
I think though with Austin Trout, going into BKFC was the smartest thing for him because I don't know how he do in the Trigon. There's not much space to move there. You know what I mean? Like, and you kind of do have to get into a slug match sometimes. And you got to make sure that your timing's great. Now, I'm not saying because he has wonderful timing, but I don't know. He likes to move a lot. You know what I mean? He's a maneuver puncher. So he's pretty much off his back foot and finding angles the whole time. And the Trigon, you really can't do that. Like you take two, three steps back and you're on the ropes. You know what I mean? You got to try and angle off most of the time. Now, if you have a good jab like me, that's my bread and butter. That's what I call my money shot. Um, I can double out and try to find that center ring. But like I said, Joe Fitzpatrick was on me. I mean, he was on my ass from start to finish, grabbing on. And like I said, I knew that something was going to open up at some point, but I didn't know if it was going to be the third, the fourth, the fifth, or even the sixth round. It just happened to open up in the first, and you know that's just how it ended. But I do think someone like Austin Trout um, makes beautiful boxing in bare knuckle, and he does a great job with using his style and utilizing that pedigree that he has from boxing. But like I said, the Trigon is different. I've never fought in the circle. I can't really vouch for it, but I'm sure it's a lot easier than fighting in a tight space triangle, the Trigon. You know what I mean? So styles make fights, and that ring's different. That's all I know. And I've seen a lot of people like Paulie Malignaggi couldn't really do good in even in BKFC. I don't think he would do great in BYB. With that said, in boxing, he was phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, it probably just depends on just the individuals in question, but there is a certain something to that. Like I've spoken to people who've like chiefly fought in BKFC, for instance, and then brought up, I guess, certain things going on in BYB, kind of the inverse of what we're doing now. And there's some guys who are like,
Right.
yeah, like just doesn't really hold much interest for me. Like, and maybe it doesn't lend itself as well to their attributes. And then even like in, I guess, a bit of a meta game, if you are a BKFC fighter, like sometimes there's like those smaller rings they use for like their prospect series events versus like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
larger dimensions for the numbered events. So even within that, I feel like some guys can have a preference too.
Yeah, and that's what they are trying to change that in BKFC with that. I think they're trying to compete with us, which I don't think anything competes with the Trigon. I think the Trigon's one of the most fascinating ideas in combat sports because it's a gunfight. You kind of got to get right off, and if you don't create a good pace right off the rip, you're kind of on the back foot already. You know what I mean? So with bare knuckle, with BKFC, I noticed like you can circle out, you can get comfortable really easy in there, and you can kind of create a slow pace. That's why I think they try to make the smaller ring though, so they made it more of a gunfight. And it's like, yeah, you guys aren't competing with the Trigon though. The Trigon is it's insane. We have like 93% knockout rate right now, I think, or something along the lines of that. And it just goes to show even someone like Joe Fitzpatrick, who has high pedigree, couldn't last even a round in there. And that guy's one of the best in my weight class right now. So and I'm not taking anything away from him. He's a hell of an opponent. He had me in trouble for a good 30, 40 seconds of that fight before I turned the tide. But it just goes to show that just the ring itself, it changed the whole dynamic of combat sports histories to date, and even the cool idea aspect of today's world of bare knuckle fighting.
Yeah, and I mean, just like you said, Joe Fitzpatrick, very highly pedigreed in gloved boxing, and then also some big looks in the world of bare knuckle boxing as well. Like his lone loss prior to obviously the outing with you was when he had fought Liam Reese under that BKB rule set, which even just talking about
Right.
different bare knuckle rule sets, still slightly different. But I guess I mostly bring that up to mention the fact that Liam Reese also cemented himself as champion on that BYB 32 card. Like
That
maybe it
was
didn't
an
work out.
unbelievable fight. That was an
Yeah, yeah.
unbelievable fight. That was an unbelievable fight.
Yeah, I was just
But
gonna. Yeah,
oh
no,
no,
sorry.
finish
Yeah, I
your
was just
thought.
gonna
Go
ask
ahead.
if
Sorry.
like maybe like just because of the nature of your fight, because it was so close to that, like maybe you didn't get a chance to catch it, but it seems like from what you're saying there, you've got a chance to see the performance.
So I was out back having an emotional moment, obviously my brother, my coaches and stuff. But we did get out there for like the last like 40 seconds of the fight. And obviously it was like, wow. I mean, he happened to land the money shot and Scott didn't, get up for the 10 count. So it was interesting. Scott did say though, he's used to BKB where I think it's a 20-second count. So it's like, we're kind of taking over the new rule set that we bringing the Queensberry bare knuckle rule set in, but we're also bringing that American dirty boxing clinching. They're not used to the clinching. This is new to them too. You know what I mean? So, um, it's cool that that was Liam's first time fighting in a BYB Trigon. So it was his first time with the promotion. And I think he did great. I think that he weathered the storm of Scott McHugh. He was kind of getting battered at first, and like I said, preparation's key. He used his timing and he landed the money shot and stopped Scotty. So, but yeah, that was definitely deserved fight of the night, and it was unreal. I actually went back and played it back. I probably watched it 3 times now. Aside from my fight, and yeah, that fight was a hell of a matchup. And for the matchmaking, whether it was Jim or Mel, they did a great job on that one for sure. That deserved to be a world title fight.
And I mean, that's an interesting component too. It almost makes this Joe Fitzpatrick win that much more interesting, or just giving an extra dimension to it, just because, I mean, you're talking about how Liam Reese essentially just, jumped into the Trigon for his first outing and became
Right.
champion over someone so accomplished in McHugh. Whereas for Fitzpatrick, he at least, I guess, had that prior look, like that BYB 30 win
Yeah.
against Johnny Jones and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, Liam Reese also it took him 3 rounds to stop Fitzpatrick. It took me one. Now I'm not saying that that makes a big difference, but I think that Liam does fight a little wild. He does at times try to bully and bull rush, and someone like Fitzpatrick is kind of a sucker for that. Like he'll back straight up on the ropes. I couldn't really do that. I don't have the body weight that obviously Liam Reese does, and I got to give it to Joe. Joe stepped up, like he went up in weight classes to go fight him. I think it was at 147 or maybe even 150. And that was for the BKB British world titles. I mean, British titles. So I give it to Fitzpatrick. He's a lot. I see a lot of him and me, taking risk and going out there and stepping up to the plate when a lot of people won't do it. So Liam Reese is the champion that they needed for that weight class at super welterweight though, and I had Scott McHugh winning it. I did. I'm not gonna lie. I like Scott. He's a buddy of mine. I had been talking to him all week. I thought that he was gonna beat him. I wasn't. I didn't think it was gonna be a stoppage. I thought maybe it was gonna go the distance, but you know what? Hey, Liam fooled everybody, and his timing looked great. His preparation looked great. He weathered the storm, and he got the job done.
Yeah, it's just such an interesting time. Like I think the BYB acquisition of BKB was such a, big game changer move in terms of fleshing out the roster. But I mean, even within that, I feel like I've mentioned this in a few interviews. Like even if people who are checking out my interviews are like maybe even just kind of getting into bare knuckle, like I have such a level of respect for I mean, anyone who's crossed over previously, but like it's really just like a different game between BKB and BYB in certain
Yeah,
instances. Like we've kind of
yeah,
touched on it here, where it's like there's the lack of the clinch component in BKB. I
yep.
mean, you mentioned the longer counts, like the difference between day of weigh-ins versus day before. It almost becomes a bit of an entirely different thing, almost like the bare knuckle
It's a
boxing
whole new
component's
game.
almost
It's a
here, but
whole new game for them, those guys. You know what I mean? So I mean, I don't think Scott was going to beat a 20 count. When he got up, he was kind of falling all over the place. I think it was a good call on the ref to just call that one off. Save the fighter. There's nothing more to prove. But these guys are coming over from a whole different rule set. They don't. Some of them are just adjusting. I'm happy that I've been in here. I feel like a pioneer for Trigon. I feel like a pioneer for BYB. So I'm familiar with this. You know what I mean? This was new to me. I think that Fitzpatrick was definitely the most highly educated and highly adjusted to fighting in BYB though, and obviously he showed it with the clinching. He was definitely working on clinch fighting most of the time in dirty boxing because he was on my ass, like I said, from start to finish with the clinch.
I guess one of the questions I had, I mean, obviously you'll fight wherever, I would imagine, but do you have a, I guess, preference between going back to the UK again and defending the title, or would the desire
Yeah,
to make that first event stateside almost, or you're just kind of down for whatever?
I mean, I know that Massachusetts commission's really tough. They don't want bare knuckle, so I started looking into what does allow bare knuckle. Connecticut's pretty big on it right now. They added Mohegan Sun for BKFC, but even over in New Hampshire doesn't care. Like their commission will allow bare knuckle. I'd like to see it come over down to the Hampton Beach Casino where my cousin Jeffrey fought back in the day on ESPN. Paulie Malignaggi's fought there. Kevin Cocky Watts. A lot of local legends in my area. So I mean, it would be really surreal for me to be able to defend my belt at home, but I would love to be back in the UK. I actually really fell in love with the UK and a lot of the people out there, and just the energy was awesome. And it's just cool to see where it started. Bare knuckle, was kind of founded out there. That was like the foundation of what we are now to date. And So I would love to fight back in the UK, but I'd love to also defend my title at home. You know what I mean? Not like if let's put it like this: if you were going to ask me if I wanted to fight in, New Orleans or Florida or Mississippi and Biloxi, I would pick UK over that anytime. You know what I mean? But I'd like to defend my title at home and do it in front of my hometown crowd and have that feel of the energy and show people what bare knuckle is out here.
Yeah, and I guess it's just kind of tied into like almost expanding the sport from what you're kind of saying. Like obviously there'd be that localized connection to, your
Right.
family, which has such a generational tradition in fighting, but it would also serve that idea of growing the sport too in like a regulatory sense. So yeah, I guess it's just a good time for you. I guess you just have a lot of options, right?
That's kind of exactly what I was going to follow up with. I feel like the ball's in my court right now, and I'm waiting for the promotion to call me, and obviously we've talked about trying to get it out in New England, and it's something that they've definitely been working on. I think it's just about timing, you know what I mean, and having the commission be like, okay, this is something new, but obviously we have real professionals in this sport now. It's not just kind of a slug match like it used to be back in the day. We're going to get technicians and stuff. So, and as you saw, like the UFC started as a David Goliath match, you know what I mean, back in the day, where there was headbutting, stomping. The foundation has changed. It's not really like that anymore. It's getting real technical and bare knuckle. It's not just once in a while you'll get a matchup of two people just slugging it out, no technicality. But my promotion's focusing on growing it out and having real fighters fight real fighters, and that's what I think people need to show the eye to. That once you understand that this is that we're real athletes and we're real fighters and we have real good pedigree and we're real boxers and stuff like that, real MMA fighters. I think a lot more people are going to turn their head to it and say that this is the new today era of fighting.
And it's such an ever evolving sort of game. Like even within the last few years, I guess you could trace it to like when BKB started rolling in a sense, but you've seen it with like all the
Right.
different bare knuckle leagues. Like there becomes these things where I guess for like certain brief periods of time, it's like, oh yeah, this is the way to do it. Like this is the most effective methodology,
Yeah.
or this
Yeah.
is just like a standardized kind of way of like looking at certain things. Like I feel like even that conversation we had about, I guess like maybe certain people who come from a gloved boxing background, like maybe their preference is
Yeah.
like a bigger ring versus like the Trigon. But I feel like even like what you're doing kind of belies that whole, I guess, like almost like lazy trope in a certain sense that's kind of been established
Yeah.
with some people where it's almost like, oh yeah, like if you come from a glove boxing background, like maybe the Trigon doesn't hold great interest, but it seems like you've kind of found your own idea of what ring craft is in that given space where you can utilize the more technical aspects of your
Yeah.
game.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. I completely agree with what you just said. Actually, that's one of the bigger things that people try to like look into is can a glove boxer be fighting in a trigon? For sure, I'm a boxer puncher, so I do know how to dig deep and get gritty when I have to. But I like to create space, and I think I've learned how to be. I have that ring generalship, like I said, and the experience in the trigon where I have my footing and I know how to create that space, but I also know how to find my angles. So I'm comfortable now with finding my timing, finding my reach, and getting rhythm in the trigon rather than, some boxers, going in there uncomfortable, not really knowing what to do and getting in a gunfight with some guy that, isn't even technically on their level, but obviously has a little bit more dog or a little bit more grit in them. And yeah, it scares a boxer that wants to be able to create space and they can't. You know what I mean? So I think I've learned all the aspects of how to fight in the Trigon, and I think that I will go down in history as one of the best to fight in there. Um, but I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, we're gonna have to wait and see. More boxers are gonna probably jump on board at some point. The MMA guys do a wonderful job in there. I know that, but they always leave all messed up and scarred up, and it's because they have to fight gritty and fight tough. They're not really fighting technical. So I think I've learned how to craft my own style and also mix in a little bit of the boxing background as well.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I mean, just such a huge moment for you. You got the belt, you got knockout of the night. Did you end up getting the phone call with Grandpa Norman that everyone was kind of like really
Yeah,
fired
yeah,
up about?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I did. It was an emotional moment. I'm actually going to see him right after this, so I haven't seen him yet, and I'm wicked excited to go see my pupper right now and get to enjoy the belt with him. And so this is just the all surreal. Like I said, from when we started, this has just been a dream, come true for me. So it's been really intense, but and it happened really fast. But we have a giant family party after once I get back from vacation. Because I'm going to New Orleans tomorrow with my best friend. Go to see my other best friend that lives out there, and then when I get back, we're having a giant party, fans, family, friends. It's just going to be really crazy. But I just it's so surreal right now. It hasn't even fully hit me yet.
Well, yeah, I want to let you enjoy the time with your papa and stuff like that. Like, I can kind of relate to that. Like, my papa is also in his 90s, and there's just something about the chance to, get to spend time
Yeah,
from them, glean the wisdom, all that.
yeah.
So, yeah, definitely want to allow you that
This is
opportunity, man.
something. This is something that I told him when I was even a young boy that I was going to give to him, and now I finally got it done, and it's awesome that he's here with me, and I get to share this moment with him.
Yeah, I love that, man. I mean, that could even be a great parting thought in and of itself, but I also figured I'd give you the floor in case there was anything you wanted to add as we're kind of wrapping up, Harry. I really appreciate you making the time.
Thank you, Dylan. Yeah, just shout out to everybody that's been there, and I'm sorry that I haven't really been able to get in connection with anybody except some close relatives and friends. I've been getting blown up right now. Obviously, a ton of people have been hitting me up. This is actually my first podcast I've done since I've gotten home, so it's pretty awesome, Dylan. I appreciate you having me on here as well. Um, it's just I haven't been able to reach out to anybody, and it's just been kind of tough to kind of thank everybody. So right now I'm saying thank you to the people that have been reaching out and showing me the love, because I'm definitely feeling it, and it's been hard to really it's been overwhelming to get back to people, and I really am really appreciative of everything and everybody that has been showing support and love for me.
Yeah, well, I mean, definitely a lot to bask in, definitely a big win, historical, and really a few different regards, and super cool that Bare Knuckle Bowker could be that first post-fight interview and things like
Yeah,
that. But
yeah.
let you get to hanging out with your papa, man, such a great moment, very cool, and just yeah, great performance at BYB 32 overall. So yeah, man, to reiterate, thanks for appearing on Bare Knuckle Bowker today, and yeah, have a good rest of your day, champ, and thanks so much.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you, my brother. I appreciate you having me.